Hello to all our friends and family out there in the financial advisor group world. Happy summer. We're almost all the way through June and inching closer to July 4th. So a happy 4th to everyone, assuming this video gets out right about around the holiday. We just wanted to put together another video on our updates on our thoughts. And really, as we talk about it in the office of what has changed, it's not much, right? For us, things still look okay. I think the theme we keep finding is that for the most part, it's surprising to us that most people don't realize how good things are today, right? Last video, we talked about that, it's almost like by chasing perfect, we're missing out on good and great, and good and great's okay. And I think that's our theme, that things are good and great. Sure, they're not perfect, and we can nitpick and find issues. And last video, if you heard me mention eggs more than once, that's probably why, is I think that was a perfect example of what we're trying to find. But again, just in general, we'll give you an update on our thoughts. And as we head into the summer months, hopefully all of you have great travels, safe travels. There's a lot of people traveling these days, and we'll get to that in a minute. So as we jump into our thoughts, it's, again, just as we talked more in the office, what we should name today's presentation, we kept coming back with the idea that everything is better than people think. And when we think about it, we understand why, right? Because before we look at today, I think we have to look back. Why do we all have this, as we call it, like a hangover when it comes to the economy and the markets? And I think, to be honest, we've been through a lot in the last 4 years, right? Before we look forward, let's look back. In the last 4 years alone, we have the onset of COVID. And just to talk about how much COVID changed our lives in the last 4 years, to the isolation, to having less time to socialize, to schools closing, to businesses closing, to working, the list just goes on and on and on, which that caused stress. On top of that, we had supply chain disruptions. So for the first time in many of our lives, if you wanted something, you couldn't get it because you couldn't make it. On top of that, we have some political issues, on whatever side you stand on. Things like the insurrection cause stress to us, right? And it changes our view of things. Add to that the Russia-Ukraine conflict that's still ongoing today, which again just adds stress to our lives. Add on top of that, partly due to Russia-Ukraine and supply chain disruptions, the highest inflation we've had in the last 50 years, which leads into, in about a year ago, the highest gas prices in our country's history. It was just a year ago, June of 2022, where gas prices hit $5 plus a gallon here in PA. I'll never forget, Liam just got his driver's license about a year ago now. And one of the first times he filled up the tank, he paid over $5 a gallon for gas. Today, we're about $3.60, $3.70 a gallon. That's a lot less worse than it was a year ago, right? So we are seeing relief. Also, look back, we've had the most aggressive Federal Reserve in our history. They've raised rates so aggressively in the last 12 months that it continues to spook us, right? That what are they doing? They're trying to slow down this economy, which has caused other issues, which lead into two bear markets, right? In the last 4 years, there have been two separate bear markets. You're supposed to get one bear market about every 5 to 10 years. We've had 2 in 4 years. No wonder it's affecting our confidence. And add on top of that, most recently in 2023, we had bank failures to start out the year. So no wonder when you look at the list of things that we're having a hard time sort of seeing clearly now. And one thing we would just want to point out, that I think things are better than people think they are. When we look forward and we talk with clients today, right, one of the things you're seeing, this is what's called the labor force participation rate. This tells you what percentage of our population is working today. Sure, we're not back to the all-time highs that we were in the early 2000s, but we are climbing, right? We see the workforce participation coming up again. It'll be hard for this to get back to a full level because there's so many baby boomers retiring today, and that COVID had retired early, that it's hard to look at this number and expect it to get back to the full level. I think a more important number to look at on a positive side is the percentage of workers aged 25 to 55, or people aged 25 to 55 that are working. It is almost at an all-time high right now. Right? One of the stories we continue to hear is, well, nobody wants to work today. This chart clearly shows that's not the case. it's not that nobody wants to work. It's that there's a lot of baby boomers who have since retired, which took a lot of people out of the workforce. And you have a lot of people going through education on the college side. This middle part of our demographics, if you would, there's almost 85% of us working who can work today, almost at an all-time high. So there are people working, which again, that's a positive thing. You lead that into wages. Not only are people working today, but the average wage growth that tells you average wage growth of how much wages are going up each year is near the highest level it's been in the last 30 years, right? You saw COVID hit and all of a sudden workers became more important. They were starting to get paid more. That's a positive thing. Sure, it's not great to have shortages of workers, but if you have shortages of workers, that forces employers to pay people more. That's a good thing. And sure, that gets pushed through us a little bit with inflation, but in general, it's a good thing for the economy if people are making more money. Even today, you see wage growth slowing down, but even today, wage growth is a much higher level than it has been for the last 25, 30 years. That's a good thing. Inflation, we talked about a little bit in the previous chart. Gas prices were high. They're not anymore, right? Sure, they're not perfect. They're not at $2.50 a gallon, which we dream they would be, but they're much better than they were. Egg prices are down. Lumber prices are down. Corn prices are down. You're actually even starting to see food prices come down as well. So you're starting to see that inflation ease at the same time wages are staying high or going up. That builds confidence, right? Because now inflation's easing at the same time that I have more income coming in. That's a positive thing. On top of the work side, and you'll get to in a minute why we think work is so important, job security is at an all-time high. If you have a job today, you're pretty confident you're not going to be let go. Sure, there's some sectors where there's layoffs, but for the most part in the economy as a whole, if you're working today, most employers are more worried about hiring people, not firing people. So you're making more than you ever have, probably. You're not worried about getting let go. So this shows the average length of people on unemployment. You can see that the average length is a much lower level than it's been historically. So even if you're let go, it tends to be for a short period of time. So again, another positive for this economy, that people who are working are making more and they're confident that they're going to stay in their jobs. What does that lead to? Spending. Manufacturers' new orders, or new orders of durable goods, if you would. Things like refrigerators, stoves, more expensive products, not things that are very quickly replaceable, like food or energy. Those are on the climb, right? When you look at sort of how we've seen that grow, you've seen this number continue to go up over the last even 6 months. That's not a sign of a recession. That's a sign of people spending money and feeling confident. So again, things look pretty good. It's almost like we want bad news to come. It's okay that things are good. We want to take a step back, right? And as we talked here in the office, is how could we change this perspective? If we could just ignore the last 4 years and not watch any TV, and someone dropped you, as this beautiful little moniker shows here, on Earth, and someone told you these facts today, right? The first thing they told you is unemployment rate is at a near record low of about 3.5%, 4%. Sure, unemployment rate's never exactly accurate, but it points to the fact that there are more people working today and labor is in high demand. That's a good thing. On top of that, the average person working today is making more than they were a year ago and making more than they ever have, right? That gives them confidence. On top of that, like we talked about before, wages high, inflation calming back down. Today, there was another inflation reading that came out and we're down below 4%. That's not perfect, but again, a lot better than the 8, 9, 10% we were at 9 months ago, 12 months ago. On top of that, this job security that people feel, it's really important, right? The job market is so crucial to this economy because if I'm confident I'm not going to lose my job, I'm making good wages, and inflation is cooling down, what would you think, right? What do you think people are going to do? So if you just took these things into place, right, and were dropped on Earth and told these 4 statistics, what would you guess consumer spending in the market are doing, right? If we look at this, it's not a surprise that consumer spending continues to do well, right? Consumer spending's high because jobs are plentiful, people are making money, and they're confident they're not going to lose their job. On top of that, with things like gas coming down, it gives us the confidence that we can spend that income. That leads into as well, what has the market done? We talked about the healing process. This is just a snapshot of how the market has done since September. The market's up about 24% since the end of September. We don't even notice it because that fog and that hangover is still hanging with us. So as we think through this, right, we get why we're all sort of gloomy and see this fog. We think, though, if you look underneath the hood, we can start to see clearly now. Hence, leading to a song that we'd like to reference by the great Johnny Nash. And we all know the song, I Can See Clearly Now. And as the lyrics go, I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunny day. So the point we'd make is things were bad, right? And they're not perfect today. And we're not saying things are going to be perfect going forward. But I think it's okay to embrace the fact that things have gotten better. We have been through a lot in the last 4 years. And that makes us feel this, as I call it, a hangover, that we continue to think that things are not getting better. And we almost feel like we want them to get worse. It's a weird time today. It's okay to say, I can see clearly now. Things are okay. So again, our thoughts are things are okay. We can see clearly now. It doesn't mean the market's going to race up another 10, 20%. We will never try to predict what will happen there. But the message we'd give is this economy for this next 3-6 months still looks pretty strong. And the labor market is so important. If people are keeping their jobs and they're confident they're going to keep their jobs and they're making more money, what are they going to do? One thing we do in America very, very well is spend money, and we're going to keep doing that. So just some thoughts on our point of view. We're not changing much on our end. Own quality companies, own boring companies. And our task to you, like always, enjoy summer. Let us worry about this stuff. Go out and enjoy the travels. There's a big world out there and plenty to see. We hope you have great summers, spend time with families, and get to see some pretty amazing places. That's part of what we love about our job, is hearing all the things that you get to do with your family and friends and enjoying summer. Thank you. We appreciate all the trust and confidence you place in us. We look forward to our next video in a month or so. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, you know where to find us. Thanks again. And from the Financial Advisory Group, let's make it a great summer.